Thank you, Professor Wah, for the presentation. Will Professor Wah please stay and be seated at the panel? The presentation slides will be uploaded on the UGC website within this week. May I also invite the chairman of the UGC, Mr. Carlson Tong, and the Secretary General of the UGC, Dr. Richard Armour, to the panel for the discussion section. Mr. Tong and Dr. Armour, please. This is an open discussion section. For guests who want to ask a question or raise a comment, please kindly raise your hand and wait for our staff to pass you a microphone.
Yeah, I just want to add that the process for us to work on the final detail is that we've also sent our proposal to the 8 universities and inviting comments from them. So that is one aspect of it. And the other aspect is today, obviously, to take the opportunity of this forum to listen to views and suggestions. And so that with all those comments and feedback, then we will continue to finalize our proposal. That's the plan. Okay, the gentleman.
Thank you. My name is John Bacon-Schoen from the University of Hong Kong. So wearing my knowledge exchange hat, I want to greatly welcome this proposal. So everything I say, please read it as a constructive comment. So I would like to suggest that the framing could be somewhat broadened. When I read the document, there are numerous references to industry and universities funding. And the examples, which are great, so I have no difficulty with the examples, but they were all about STEM or about money. There was nothing there about social or cultural benefit. I think there are some very good examples we could show. So there are a number of places. So on the matching funds, it specifically says university/industry. So I would like to suggest if we follow the UK, the context there was knowledge transfer partnerships. So if we use the language of partnerships, so partners who fund or will benefit from the research rather than users, because the end users may not be the party that we're partnering with. So I think that would substantially broaden it, make it clear this is not targeted just at industrial or STEM type projects. The second point I wanted to make is again broadening in a somewhat different way. So the UK, as I understand it correctly, the UK research councils require the pathway to impact statement for all grant applications, not just for specified ones. So I recognize they do allow special cases where perhaps you're doing something deeply theoretical, but the general principle would be then that all GRFs perhaps should have a pathway to impact statement, understanding this is about potential impact, and that, again, it could be potential academic impact rather than necessarily just potential non-academic impact. And the last point I wanted to make so I can't resist this one. I know you've already said in the earlier session, for people who were here, that you're going to rethink the calculation of the competitive part of the R portion. But given there's a reference in here saying this might be included in it, so let me make a much bigger bid and say, why don't all competitive grants count in a calculation of the competitive portion? In fact, why not all contract research money as well? If we're going to go big, let's go for the whole thing and say anything where the universities are bringing in money from outside should count. This is evidence that we're doing good research or we have good partnerships with outsiders. That surely is what you want to encourage. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I think you make some very good suggestions. Before I pass over to Ben and Richard to comment, on the R portion part, in fact, we mentioned in our first session that we're carrying out review, and your suggestion is something which obviously for sure they would take into account. This had been suggested to us before, that why shouldn't, when you calculate success, why shouldn't you include a success factor for not just RGC but the other bodies as well? So, you know, that point is something we'll consider. So, but Ben, do you want to?
So I think in your second point, that to include a pathway statement for all projects, we are in the process of doing that already. That is, but today's discussion is on the Research Impact Fund. But for all the GRF, ECS, CRF, and so on, in the future, we are going to require pathway statements.
Otherwise, I think very good points. Thank you. And Richard, do you want to?
No. I welcome John's suggestions. They're all eminently sensible. I think I would say about academic impact. That this is a difficult issue, and certainly I think we would be open to consider an argument that is a research proposal that's at a fairly fundamental level. The key is whether there is a pathway. Might be way downstream, but if there's a clear articulated pathway, some fundamental work and at the molecular level could lead to drug discovery later on. If that pathway is articulated and identified, then I think it's fundable. About the knowledge exchange statement, I think it's optional at the moment, but we're thinking about making it mandatory for all grant proposals.
Yeah, sorry, one quick follow-up point I can't resist. So the comments that were made in the first session about aligning with other research funds, I can't resist pointing out that the medical and health research fund specifically asks all projects to talk about the translational potential. So I think that may be another way to frame this.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Fanny in front.
Yeah, I'm Fanny Cheung from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. I echo John's concern about the predominance of STEM area in the paper. And for the social science and humanities area, when we talk about impact, probably we may not need 4 million. When you force everyone to set up another institute, I think then we're just trying to create white elephants in a way, because we need to justify the 4 million. Can you be more flexible? Because when we're not going into the technology area, we can be more creative about our impact.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah, okay, so we would take that into consideration.
Yeah. Thank you. This is your chance. Any other questions?
Okay,
Please.
This is Sharon Tim from the Lingnan University. I heard that will be like 4 million, and the university is expected to provide half or like we have to give 2 million to get another 2 million, or in fact now today I heard that it is. Because when I read the document, I thought it was at least that we have to put up 2 million. But today I heard that it is 4 million that we have to put up with, to provide, and then we'll get another 4 million as the minimum. I echo what Professor Zhang just mentioned, that for the arts and humanities, how do we get that 4 million? Especially, I just heard NGO. I mean, those are really the user and the beneficiary. We very much hope to create the impact on them, and so that it will benefit society at large. Then I read from a document that if we cannot get a partner or an industry partner to provide that 4 million, then does it mean that the university is expected to provide that? Thank you.
Let me try to address that. I think that we are not asking the NGO. This is different from an ITF grant. It's not the same as asking companies or NGOs to put up the matching fund in order to get the project funded. This is requiring matching from the university itself. For example, like in the projects funded on teaching and learning, like doing e-learning that we funded in the last 2 years, we also require 100% matching from the universities, and they put up the money on teaching and learning itself. So it is not really the matching from the from industries or NGOs. I think here we are trying to engage the PIs or the researchers to have discussions early on with the stakeholders, with the NGOs, with the people who will be using the research community in doing the research, but not necessarily getting monetary support from them from the beginning. So this is different from an ITF grant in which they really have to put up real money to get participation. The university, I think Lingnan also participated in the e-learning projects in the last 2 rounds.
the gentleman behind first and then. Yeah, please, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. George Liu from PolyU. Two questions. First, if I want to buy some instrument, okay, how much percentage is allowed to in this scheme? Okay. The second is the collaboration between multiple universities is more encouraged or just one single university. If say okay, multiple universities is encouraged, so would you say you should apply the AOE or the other SIM-based? So that's the second one. Thank you.
Here, I think that you are talking about the details of what would be needed in doing a research. We are not excluding anything in the research. That is, you can use that to buy equipment. You can use that to hire people. You can have collaborations among multiple universities, or just a collaboration with your own colleagues in your department. Everything would be allowed. What would be important is that with the resources that you gain from this project, how do you demonstrate or at least develop a pathway leading to the impact? So that's what we are looking for.
I need that. Okay. Can you compare it with ITF, not in terms of the funding requirement, but this way we can understand better what your the selection criteria are?
So here, what we are looking for, this is a project which is different from the ITF. It is not, it's more than, I think that you should not confuse or limit that to only translational projects. Here, what we are looking for is because it is a 5-year project, so there is lots of room for the development of ideas from the beginning before it gets translated into impact. For an ITF project, they are looking at much shorter term. Companies cannot wait for 5 years to wait for something to mature. So they are looking for quick return within 1 to 2 years when they put up the money. Here we can afford to wait for a longer time to develop the initial research. Maybe in the first 2 years, 2.5 years, you develop your research. And then the research potentially would have impact. There could be a translational component later on in the process, in the second half of the project, and at the end of the 5 years, that there would be some form of demonstrable results beyond the publication of papers. So this is something that because that's why we purposely set it to be a 5-year project and not 1 or 2 year like a GRF. So this is what we are looking for. You have to go from research from the beginning to demonstrating, or at least proposing that there will be impact and a pathway to achieving impact at the end.
I mean, I think it would be useful for you to understand why are we doing this? What is the purpose? There's a purpose for this. And it obviously, at the previous government and the former CE, Mr. Leung, he felt strongly, because this came from his policy address, he felt strongly for Hong Kong, our research is not focused enough on the translational side. He wants them to be translational so they can provide direct benefits to society. He was thinking, obviously, when he started talking about this, he was thinking more specifically on industrialization. Because at Hong Kong, all our factories moved to China, and he felt that Hong Kong could industrialize, and he felt that research could regenerate that. And I think that's where his original thinking was coming from. But then when UGC and LGC started thinking this further, we think they should not be restricted to industrialization, because you can provide economic benefits, but there are other benefits which are more things you can't touch. It would be like society, old age, environment. Those cannot be measured in terms of economic output. So we are trying to spread this to say it is not just economic benefits, but it is society benefits, communal benefits. So anything you do which will produce a long-term lasting benefit, we will consider. So you're thinking, this is not doing it for the sake of doing it. Why are you doing this? What is the purpose? You have to think that way. There must be a purpose for the research. I mean, this is looking from a layman's point of view. that if you look at it from the translational economic benefit, then you can see how that can be applied to the non-economic benefit. Same principle.
I think that here we need to be careful that we are not trying to form a stereotype so that all research would put into this form in the future. There's definitely room for blue sky research that may have academic impact, but not necessarily societal impact in a very long run until it may be like 10 or 20 or 30 years later. And those we are not trying to exclude them. But however, for this particular sector, the Research Impact Fund, we are trying to define or try to change the culture and the behavior of certain types of research in which people can articulate the impact at the end. I mean that this is in fact like a changing the culture from the beginning so that it will not become an afterthought when the research is done. I think in most cases, I think that even in the theme-based research and the AOE project, we had a hard time to ask the PI or the PC to specify the impact from the beginning. They said, oh, I'm going to write nature and science papers or high-impact papers. But when you ask them, when they push them to say what will be the impact, then they said, oh, they scratch their heads and say, now there will be impact at the end of 5 years. So it becomes almost like an afterthought. So this is like trying to change the behavior and the culture, at least for a subset of the research that fits into this form.
This is directly targeted at the impactful research projects. You shouldn't apply this to what we're talking about to everyday all the other research because they serve different purposes.
Exactly.
So I think don't mix the two together. This is specifically for this.
Richard Walker, City. You made the link from the policy address. Does that imply the impact is meant to be in Hong Kong and Hong Kong only?
The impact is actually could be anywhere. It could be worldwide. We are looking for now, I think that I need to make sure that we make this point, carry this point across. Here, we are not looking for the impact and the relevance. There could be local relevance. The research could be locally relevant. But we want to have research that have global impact. So that it could be, you can be studying local issues, but the issues would carry long-term international impact. So those are research of importance. We are not looking for only studying global problems, non-local problems. They do not necessarily carry high impact. So there's a difference between local relevance versus global impact.
Please, I mean, any questions that you think of, please ask. Yeah.
Oh, George Liu at Purdue again. I saw the announcement will be made at early 2019, and you said that the fund is for 3 years, from 2017 to 2019. So that means in this round, so all the $150 million will be used, or just 50 million?
I think the chair mentioned earlier the money can be carried forward. That is,
okay.
So we would fund $50 million each year on the projects, and they would be done for the 3 years, at least in this pilot project. After the 3 years, more money, maybe the chair could put in more money or from other sources.
No, obviously, I mean, we don't want to. We're not going to say we're 50 million, we must spend it. We're not going to do it like this. But then obviously, if, for example, at the end of the pilot project, say of the 150 million by mid-2019, we only spend 50, there's 100 million left. We will have to consider, UGC will have to approve to carry it forward. So we can consider an RGC whether the project is doing well. I mean, we might review it. So obviously, we learn from this. Yeah, Richard, please.
I just want to make a general point that we made in the earlier session is we also have an eye on making a case to government for a substantial increase in the research, the proportion of GDP spent on research. Now, from other jurisdictions, we know that when they managed to demonstrate high impact through research and made the case to government, it was very successful. Now, we believe that across the board, if we can do the same, we've got a stronger case to go to LegCo, to go to the government and ask for a doubling of the percentage of GDP. Now, this is just one part of it. But this fund, if it produces examples, not just economic, but societal, then will catch the attention of the government, and they'll be less unwilling to invest in the research because they can see outcomes that are relevant to them and to their priorities. That's important. This is just one piece of the jigsaw, but right across the board, we're conscious that we have to make a valid case to government for more funding.
I mean, let me say something. This is my personal view. I might get myself in trouble, but let me say it. I believe, at present in Hong Kong, research funding is a zero-sum game, for RGC at least. Now, we have a pot of 1 billion in the past to spend. If we want to have more to translation research, I have to take it from somebody else. You've got to understand this. It is a zero-sum game. Then you say, okay, then translation is so good, give all the translation research, then no more academic, no more blue sky. Is that the right thing to do? I'm not sure. Without blue sky, you don't have the base, then you don't have translational. I mean, we don't believe. So we can't just shift everything. So therefore, in order to really achieve what we all want, we need more research funding. We always say to government, give us more money and we put all the translation research. We can do that. But if you want to keep the money as it is, then I have to take it from somebody else. And even for the something else that we're giving to, that's not enough. And you want to take more from it. Then you create fighting between universities, which is not what we want to see. So I mean, we, the UGC and LGC, we're working very hard to make government understand this, to ask for more money, not to change around what we have got. Because what we got, we don't have enough as it is. I mean, this is my personal. I mean, Ben, I don't know.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, Richard.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. So
oh, yeah, right. There's a gentleman at the back.
Thank you. Alfred Tan from Baptist U. I just want to touch on the question about the example, to LegCo and so on. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what I'm hearing here is that this fund is translational research and leads to impact. I think the key here is the pathway, identifying pathway to impact. But, well, again, I stand corrected. Having a pathway to impact and actually making real impact, positive impact, are two different stories. Okay, and the impact itself might not happen in 3 years. So, again, how can we even anticipate example coming out of this? But I think it's a great thing. I agree with my counterpart, at the university. I just want to question again, how much of the pathway to impact that you value, and how do you actually, weight that in your whole criteria?
I mean, let me just say that this is a pilot. We've got to start somewhere. So we're starting this, and obviously its success will help us to persuade government maybe to continue to support it with more money. So that's why we have the midterm review. We need to, later on, RGC to demonstrate that this is working, we're not wasting money, it's really giving to research of good cause, and to persuade government, hey, because after 150 million, then there's no more. We want it to continue. So Ben.
I think that to answer your question, as I said earlier, that this is a proposal, so we cannot expect you to demonstrate the impact right from the beginning. But I think that in all research proposals that we see today, it would be easy to justify academic impact. That is, work has not been done before, it is a good research problem. Everybody writing proposals would need to justify academic impact at the end, even though the academic impact may not be there from the beginning. Now, I think that we are going one step beyond now. We are saying that besides the academic impact, can you justify, or at least justify the societal impact or the long-term impact to society and community right from the beginning? So this is going one step. We are asking the PIs to do one more thing from the beginning to justify more than the academic impact today.
Jim, just add one more point. Going back to the chairman's point about the adding to the total research expenditure, this fund, limited fund, $150 million, is not coming from any research domain. It's coming from the UGC's discretionary fund. So if you like, for 3 years, the UGC is prepared to invest its discretionary fund in this impact. So it won't take it away from.
We're digging into our pocket to come up with this money to support this.
And if it doesn't work, if it doesn't produce long-term funding from the government, in part it will have failed. because this is an initiative to try and help to demonstrate to government that this is a good idea, and research is worth investing in, not spending on, investing in. This is our attempt to stimulate that discussion and see where it takes us. It may fail. I don't think it will, because I think the quality of our research is such that we can argue a good case, and this is just a way to showcase it.
Professor Choi first, and then
Lapchi here. I actually did not have a question, but somehow Chairman thought I had a question. Perhaps it was my look. Anyway, so anyway, since I am asked to ask a question, actually I had a comment. I mean, it was interesting that it's like UGC, LGC on one side. Even though I'm now a member of LGC, I don't feel that I should be on one side or the other. I think we are now, so we need to work together. We are on the same side to do good research, and also to do good research, we need to get more money for research. So therefore, we are on the same boat. And talking about this particular research impact fund, I mean, I just want to make a comment. This better work. Otherwise, you just demonstrate to the government that there's no impact. Yes. So therefore, we are on the same side, on the same boat. We must make this work. Yeah. And I'm sure that it works. But on this note, I'd like to make another comment. Ben actually gave 5 or 4 very good examples. I'm sure there are more examples amongst the different institutions. We have not done a good campaign on the successful good impact studies, okay, or good studies that led to good impact. I'm just calling upon everybody's help to do such a piece of work. It is research. I mean, you need to find these examples. So therefore, we can actually demonstrate LGC, UGC should publish a series of these propaganda materials for the Legislative Council.
No, this is well said, and in fact, I may be terrible if we've only got a handful of people applying for this impact fund. It will look terrible. So no, and it's also true, Ben. It's maybe in the future. I think you're planning to do already is to publish more of the projects we have approved, and then people will start to realize maybe as examples.
In fact, there will be hundreds of impact case studies coming out in the RE 2020.
Exactly.
So in 2 years' time, you will see many impact case studies because they all take time to develop. I think that universities want to do the research, but they don't want to spend the time to document, and the PIs or the researchers don't want to spend the time to document the impact. But now we are making it a requirement for all the universities to document the impacts of their research. And this, I think that in 2 years' time, we would have many good stories of impact to showcase to the government.
I'm sorry, Lachi is not my boss anymore, so I can criticize him. I don't actually agree with that statement, because I think there are some very good cases already out there, which we submitted as part of our knowledge exchange reports back to UGC. So I think if you go through those reports, so in Hong Kong we made sure we wrote you full impact cases, not just a short form. And I think that's already a very important part. But I agree entirely with Ben. The impact cases in 2020 will fit exactly with this to help make the case to government. And you referred to the previous chief executive, but you didn't refer to the current one. And I think if you listen to her speeches, again, this is clearly aligned with her thinking. But if I can come back to Richard's points, the issue about the impact pathways, the other part I referenced at the beginning is the partnerships. Yeah. So even if we can't yet show the impact, if we can show that we've been able to engage with partners and to get them to put forward some money and invest in it in the broadest sense, I think that's already helps us to persuade LegCo and the public. It doesn't necessarily mean we've achieved all the impacts. We know from the RE UK experience it may well take at least 10 years to show the full impact. But if we can show we've engaged with the community and with the industry and with the government as our partners, and they're helping support these projects, not just all the universities coming up with the money. I think that's far more persuasive, and I think that's what we... So I think the partnership part is just as important as the shared funding part.
Okay, thank you. Lady in front. Yeah.
I'm Mary Wei from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. I have a question about the operation. For example, the university has very strict guideline. If you have a contract with a company, you need to justify why you approach that company. Maybe you need 3 quotations, open tendering. So when it comes to talking with companies, we may face some difficulties. Say if we negotiated with them for a few months and then suddenly we found we need to fulfill the guideline of the UGC. We cannot just talk with one company. We have to open up our requirement for tendering. How do we deal with this?
I think here we are talking about research in the open domain. RGC is funding research in the open domain. So as a result, this is different from ITC research or contract research in which you have to offer tender to companies. All the research that RGC funds are in an open domain. So which means that when you talk to a company, you're open. This is a research that you can open up to all the companies. They can potentially use the result. You're not going to sell the result or charge them for a fee in using the research. This is what we are looking for.
So the open tender doesn't apply?
Doesn't apply.
It doesn't apply.
Yeah.
I'm SC from HKU. Sometimes, like academic excellence versus impact, it doesn't always go together. If you say about the track record of the applicant, can you explain more detail of the track record? Are you referring to the publications or more on the impact generation part?
Okay. The track record here, I think that what we are looking for is not just only publications. It's not that you have published in high impact journals before and this is considered as track record. The track record, in fact, is the background of the investigator, whether the PI is qualified to do the research itself. That is more related to the track record. Not just it is a combination of the background, the publications, the experience, everything put together holistically. That's what defines the track record.
Hi, I'm Angel Chen from PolyU. I want to ask a question just to clarify. In the spirit of promoting real collaboration between institutions and kind of avoiding competition, would this new scheme consider giving funding to co-PI, the institutions of co-PI as well?
Yes, I think that there is no exclusion, even for all the for example, for the theme-based and the CRF, the research money can be divided up across the different institutions. But what we want to avoid is that we want to really have genuine collaborations from the beginning, not just dividing up the money. So giving the money to the co-I or co-PI is not a problem at this point. But we need to stress that in the proposal that you need to make an effort, a strong effort, to show that there is genuine collaborations.
Yeah, but that will be a good incentive. Thank you.
Tom Chung, HKUST. So following up with the genuine collaboration, can you elaborate on how do we define genuine collaboration? Is it in form of previous existing papers, publications?
I think I can give you some good examples of genuine collaborations versus superficial collaborations. The genuine collaborations would be like in a research group. If you have weekly meetings, you co-supervise students, you write papers together. these are considered as genuine collaborations. On the other hand, if you say you publish one papers together but you never meet, and then you only meet once a year, that will be considered as superficial collaboration, because you're just trying to develop the format but not necessarily the content. I think that the evaluation is that you need to propose a management plan in your proposal, meaning that, like, if you have $20 million, obviously you have a management plan on how to manage the multiple PIs. When you come to the interview, you have to explain to the panel, what are you doing? How are you going to manage the whole team of people? What is your plan? And if you have any demonstrable collaborations before, that would be even better. That is, like, you are not just putting together strangers to work together on a project, but you have already gotten genuine collaborations before.
Oh, Ben, I've got a question for you myself. So in your midterm review, what could be the outcome? I mean, if you are not happy with, for example, it shows that there's no collaboration, what will you do?
In the extreme case, the project could be terminated. Okay, that there is no provision that we have to fund the project until completion, but the midterm review is used to safeguard, to make sure that the project is on track and is on track on using, not just on track on the deliverables, in the technical deliverables, but also on the use of the money. Meaning that if it's in the middle, you have used up only 5% of the money and 50% of the time has passed, then obviously something is wrong. And we want to know what happens, so that you, at that point in time, you need to provide a good explanation. So the midterm review is to safeguard, to ensure that the panel is happy with the progress in both the technical side as well as the spending side.
So if, for example, say that it's not so bad as to lead to a termination, but you feel that it's not going on track, will you follow up?
I think the panel could make recommendations at that point. For example, like, one possibility is that the panel can say, you are it is too diverse, the project is too diverse, you need to focus, you need to deliver one aspect of the project. In the remaining time, you need to focus on certain aspect of the project. That could be also up to the panel to make the recommendation. So many things can happen in the midterm review. Some adjustments could be made, some recommendations could be given on how the project can progress to the end. Oh, you can give more money.
Hi, I'm Yu Tong Sun from Chinese University of Hong Kong, and I just want to first of all say that in principle I really welcome the idea. Actually, in fact, an hour ago I just came back from a meeting with about 20 CEOs from different banks talking about gender and sexual diversity, and that was sponsored by HSBC and KPMG, some of the biggest financial corporations. So I'm really glad that, because in the past some universities may not take impact seriously as compared to the merely academic impact. So I'm really quite interested in it in principle. But I have got one concern and one comment that I hope that you can take into consideration. The first one, echoing Professor Fanny Zheng's point about the lower threshold. I think for a social scientist to think about a 4 million, in fact, that should be an 8 million project, right? That if I understand it correctly, that would be really quite challenging, especially for social scientists. And the second one is actually echoing on the previous point about midterm review. I wonder also whether there are possibilities for more flexibility to be built in the scheme as well, because in my experience, for real organic collaboration with different industries, it should be very much a two-way and ongoing process. And just for your consideration, I wonder whether there can be resources that can be put aside just in case that, say, during the midterm review, that, say, a certain project may require resources that are additional in order for it to be proceeded to different directions. Because I think if, from what I understood from the previous response, that it seems that the panel is quite interested in building in that kind of flexibility. So I wonder whether that may be a suggestion that you might consider. Thank you.
I mean, we're not saying that you must have collaboration. We're just saying that collaboration will be helpful, that's all. So you can have a project with no collaboration, that's all right. But once you said you have collaboration and you earn the higher points, then you got to have genuine collaboration. I think that's what we're saying. So we're not stopping working, solo projects.
I think, and in one thing that I want catch on in what you're saying is that there is a need to, like when you make the proposal from the beginning, if you digress too much from what you are proposing from the beginning in what you're proposing, there need to be a good reason to justify that. You cannot just say, I propose something in the to do A in the beginning, and I discover that I want to do B in the midterm. That probably would be difficult for the panel to understand. So this means that at least you need to have a good reason to convince the panel that there is such a need.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because you have been assessed based on the proposal you put forward, and you have been granted money on the basis of what you said. But then if you've done something differently, then obviously it's not fair. Then you have to reassess. I mean, it's just rules and procedures, right? Any other comments?
Tang Yi from Hong Kong Baptist University. So we noticed that from the draft of operational framework, it indicated that the representatives of the Innovation and Technology Commission would be invited to join the interview session as observer. So we are wondering what's the role of those government representatives in this whole process, because we might have the concern, whether their presence would somehow indicate the preference or the scope of this impact fund. Since we are a lot of social scientists, they do research that generate impact which government may dislike.
I think that here the panels are not only limited to ITC members, but more could be from society itself. Meaning that we are looking for inputs into the panel. The panel is making an evaluation, and they are serving on a personal basis. They are not representing ITC when they come in. They are evaluating the research or the proposal from the point of view whether there is impact from a technical point of view, from a societal point of view, and so on. So I think that here, when all panel members are invited to come in to serve, they are serving on a personal basis, not representing a particular sector in the community.
They're good comments, good questions, and any other? I think that's about it. Yes. I personally just want to say that I mean, it's great, and I can see that generally. This is welcome. It's a good initiative. It's a pilot, and let's make a success of it. That's all I want to say. Ben, do you want to? Oh, Ben is making the closing remark.
I forgot my folder.
You didn't get beaten up.
Where's my speech?
Oh, I've got it here.
You got it here? Okay, very good. Okay, so the MC.
Is there any more questions from the floor? If not, we will end the discussion section here. So may I invite Professor Benjamin Wah to give us some closing remarks on today's symposium, please.